Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 11th episode
Hello.
of A Week Ahead news show. It is Monday, May 19th, 2025, with me and my friend Tommy.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I can't believe we're already so many episodes in. It's been truly a great time, talking about the news with my friend Liam and y'all. So I hope you've been enjoying the show, and make sure you give us a like, a subscribe, and please follow us up on our Facebook so we can stream on Facebook. We have to get 100 followers for that. So looking forward to another great show today.
Thank you, Tommy. Yep, all of that's in the description as well. For others, Facebook, you could follow us on there. Added those to all the descriptions. For weather for today, right now it's 56 degrees. Let me refresh that so I know that's precise. 55 now. Let's go. But today was a high of 60, low at 42. Tomorrow, Tuesday, it's going to be cloudy, high of 63, low of 50. Wednesday through Saturday will be rainy here. Wednesday, high of 50, low of high of 59, low of 50. Thursday, high of 53, low of 46. Friday, high of 53, low of 46, same as actually Thursday. Saturday, high of 59, low of 46. Will probably be humid a little bit on Saturday. Sunday will be sunny, partial cloudy, high of 64, low of 48. So it'll be a little bit sunny on Sunday too. We have the stocks above us for today. The Dow was up 0.3% today. Nasdaq was basically even 0.02%. The Russ 200 was negative 0.4, and the S&P was up 0.09%. Tommy, we'll go over the
Yeah, and
stocks for
sort
the
of
week.
your Yeah, so last week the stocks were also up. So in aggregate, they were up 755 points, 0.69 for the Dow, 1.80%. Nasdaq last week in aggregate was up 2.87% or 536.55 points. S&P 500 again was up in aggregate 151 points, 0.18 or 2.60%. So stocks, I guess, are doing fairly well today. They're doing fairly well last week as well. So do you want to move on to our funny topic?
Yep. Tommy will be starting off us with that.
Okay. You know, let's talk about the beach. Okay, let's talk about the beach and let's talk about some seashells. Okay, because this story is just insane to me. It's just crazy. So for those of you who haven't heard, former FBI director, a guy named James Comey, who is um, you know no fan of the current president, President Trump. You know, Comey was the FBI director at the very, very, very beginning of Trump's first term. He was kind of a holdover, and seemingly, what it looked like was trying to go down was, Trump was trying to put undue influence on the Justice Department, even though the Justice Department's supposed to be a semi-independent agency that was established to avoid corruption after the Nixon Watergate scandal. So Comey was like, no. So then Comey got fired and humiliated by Trump. And that's how we got in this process of having the Attorney General of the United States essentially being a lackey to the current president. So that's sort of the beef. Okay. That's sort of the beef, to put it simply. So then a couple days ago, the former director Comey was out for a beach walk, it seems. He said, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." And these shells, they're kind of like like a blondish 8 and then like black 6 and then 47. So 8647 is what this post said. So some Republicans, they view this as a threat to Trump, such as 86 means harm to the 47th president. Several Republicans want there to be consequences, such as the Homeland Security Director and known puppy killer, Kirsten Nomi, um, known Russian asset, Director of National Intelligence, Kobe Gabbard. And to me, this story is just crazy because to me this is clearly not a threat. This is just core political speech. It's not a threat. So I went through 4 years of law school. And in your 4 years of law school, you learn a lot about a specific ideology called textualism and originalism. So I'll start with textualism because originalism is kind of just a variant of textualism. The textualist just simply says If you have an ambiguity in something in the law, you have an ambiguity in some statute, etc., you look to the plain language of what that word means. Okay, very, very, very simple. Now, there's problems with this approach. I could talk on and on and on about sort of constitutional interpretation with my JD in the background. I'll spare you all that. But um, textualism is a big deal, and textualism is seemingly the predominant way of viewing the law, certainly on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. Um, so I looked it up. 8647. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? I'm unsure. I see an ambiguity there. So this is right from Google. Means eject or bar someone from a restaurant, bar, etc. And then the second definition is reject, discard, or cancel. So that's the plain text meaning of 86th. Okay. So if all we care about, is plain text of words, this is clearly not a threat. And I don't think it's a threat either. I think this is core political speech that was meant to show that the former FBI director, James Comey, doesn't like Donald Trump, doesn't like his authoritarian impulses, doesn't like that he's sticking his grubby hands into the Justice Department that's supposed to be a semi-independent agency. And he was just simply consistent with the First Amendment, expressing his views on core political speech. And then, but the right being the right, they don't like Comey because he stood up for the rule of law and he stood up for democracy.
Hmm.
Because of that, they're going to take this Instagram post, they're going to conflate it into something that it's not, in order to inflict some political damage on the former director. And it's all just a sham. It's all just a sham. Director Comey is free to express his political opinions in a nonviolent way, just as he did with this Instagram post.
Agreed. And that's kind of how I see it too. It's interesting how different people see things, or even like I remember watching this video. It may have been from recently, March Taylor Greene talking about how like there was a place in Georgia where everyone has to have firearms, and they haven't had a murder like since they enacted this like decades ago. And you just look it up and online and see that that's false. Like even from the local like police crime statistics, looking at like every year they've had murders before. So people like on the right and can just get swayed so easily with some of this misinformation. And some people on the left both can do it, but like when you have congressmen and like we're talking about Homeland Security Director of National Intelligence, talking about it. A lot of it's just a farce, and they kind of just want to stow away from all the money they're spending right now. At least Homeland Security, because of how much money ICE is spending. They're saying their budget will be out by July or June, but that'll be interesting. So this is just more BS for them to push.
Yeah, and does anyone honestly believe that the former director of the Federal Bureau of Investigations is a credible threat to the president of the United States? If you think that, I have a bridge I want to sell you. The guy was in law enforcement. You know what I mean? He was in law enforcement. He's making a political statement here, but they're blowing this up out of proportion for political purposes, and to quash dissent amongst those who disagree with the ruling regime's priorities.
Agreed. So we'll go on to our first topic, which is changing up a little bit. It's about the House Budget Committee. First, they voted down, this was 2 days ago, Trump's bill, but last night they ended up passing it. So I'm reading this NBC News article. We're talking about the House Budget Committee advanced President Trump's multi-trillion-dollar domestic policy package Sunday night, 2 days after a group of conservatives voted to reject it. The vote was 17-16 along party lines, with 4 Republicans opposing the bill committee in Friday's vote. The outcome is a positive sign for a massive party bill line after a significant setback on Friday, but it still needs changes before it secures its votes to pass the full House. And it also facing challenges from the Senate as well, because it has to go through there. Because Republicans in the Senate have said it won't clear without major changes. The package includes a major increase for immigration enforcement and the military. I'm guessing that, just especially because of how much money they've been spending on ICE. They're going to need more money for that, which would extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts, and it would, which are scheduled to expire at the end of the year. It includes a series of cuts to Medicaid food assistance, clean energy funding to pay for $1 trillion in tax cuts, and new red ink. Some that's interesting here to me at least. Well, one's basically the Medicaid one, but like we kind of knew anyway, they were gonna have to spend more money on ICE and military. But if they're gonna be spending more money on the military and ICE, and also extending tax cuts with the tariffs, because like the tariffs are just gonna get pushed back on the taxpayer as well, so we'll pay a little bit more in taxes as well, but it's not gonna cover a lot of this money. Um, the successful vote was a product of Republican leaders making inroads over the weekends. I forget we said like it happened last night at midnight. Um, those conservatives have insisted that Medicaid work requirements take effect immediately, and that the clean energy credits be eliminated sooner as well. So there's some stuff in here that is gonna affect stuff, and like we kind of all know we would like clean energy credits, obviously, um, and a lot of this deals with clean air. Like clean energy will give us cleaner air, so if we could get that, that'd be great. And even people on the right, RFK Jr. talks a lot about like a healthy America. Clean energy is a step to that. It's way better than non-renewable resources, and they have scrubbers like carbon filters now for coal and other non-renewable resources, fossil fuels, natural gas, but it's still not best for the environment. So if we can get renewables out there, like it's interesting how like in the industrial era and even before we used mills for a lot of power, and we kind of went away from that. But we can get some water going and even more solar, because solar has been a lot. I've seen a lot in the engineering field. I've one of my coworkers is a solar developer now. He lives in PA, but his company's I believe out of Oregon. So there's a lot of development all around there. I have a lot of coworkers that actually went and worked in the solar fields, or in the field for solar. And then there was one last one. Oh yeah, windmills. Because a lot of people on the right talk about the environment aspect of windmills and killing birds, but that's been like beaten by engineers and people that are smarter than us, because like they've developed like tracking systems and basically sensors on the windmills that get put on it, and if a bird comes by it, it'll tell the windmill to shut off, and I could tell with like a certain mileage. So there's studies people could look online if you want about how there's certain like engineering feats they're beating with that to make it safer as well. And it kind of just talks a lot about
Do you want me to
speakers
jump in here?
talking about it. Yeah, because the rest of this is kind of people talking about it. Do you know anything else
Yeah.
about money wise for it?
No, I'll just start off with giving people sort of a procedural breakdown of where this bill stands in the Congress. So, obviously the bill has been drafted. The bill initially went down in the Budget Committee late last night at like a 1 a.m. vote. It passed the Budget Committee. But this bill still has quite a long ways to go. It's got to go to the Rules Committee, who will then, set it up for a vote on the full floor of the United States House. All spending bills have to originate in the United States House of Representatives. So then that bill will get sent over to the United States Senate, okay, where Republicans hold a majority, but they do not hold a substantial majority, which is true with the House as well. So they're going to mull over that bill. They'll probably amend it up and down, which then means it will have to go into reconciliation because the bills between the House and the Senate version have to match. So a lot of things have to happen, and that reconciled bill has to, possibly overcome a filibuster, gain majority support in the House of Representatives. So we're still, quite a ways away here from, this bill becoming law and being sent to President Trump's desk, which makes it very interesting because the Republicans they were pushing this sort of self-imposed deadline that hey they wanted this bill passed as quickly as possible, and this couple day delay makes that a lot more difficult. Now, as we move to the substance of the bill itself, the bill is of course terrible for working people and Americans in general. As you were going on, it eliminates subsidies for clean air, for clean energy. Those things are critical for securing the future of our children and making sure that they have a habitable planet to live in going forward. Um, it also takes aim at Medicaid. Again, this is their golden goose. This is Republicans that they go to bed every night and they're dreaming about cutting Medicaid. Okay, so they're looking to do that all so that they can preserve their tax breaks for the ultra wealthy, the billionaires, the oligarchs. So you don't need your Medicaid. You can pay for your prescriptions out of your own pocket. But Elon Musk, he needs that $100 million tax break, for instance. So it's
Yeah, and
just
I looked
disgraceful.
that up
It,
a
it
little
just
bit as
keeps.
well. Um, like about what they're gonna cut in Medicaid, and it seems like families as four making as little as 35 will see new costs for going in the doctor. Um, they're getting rid of they're basically kicking millions out of like the beneficiaries off health insurance programs. It's covering about like 71 million low income Americans. They're also going to see like some seniors lose access to long term care coverage. I don't know if that means at home or in a facility, but maybe it's both. And states would lose a portion of federal dollars that help them cover those that are just above the poverty line. So, like we talked about before, weeks ago here in Ohio, if you have CareSource, this is what they're talking about. That is federally funded. The state that's funded halfway through the state, halfway through the feds. It might not be perfect 50-50. But if they're going to lose some of that money, the state's going to have to cut some people on that. The bill would also bar Medicaid from funding services at clinics that also perform abortions, such as Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood services has a lot more services, performs a lot more things than just abortions. They have regular health checkups. So I know there's one in Youngstown, I think 101. If you lived around here and were a woman with CareSource, you could lose access just to getting like regular checkups at your gynecologist at a Planned Parenthood. May have never had an abortion in your life, may never need it, but you'd be losing that. It's basically an implement to, cut some of the raising costs that are going to be coming because we're raising costs for the military and ICE, Homeland Security, but also something that's happening for your rate of tax cuts are going to cost $4 trillion over the next 10 years. So that's something too. Like even if Doge is saving billions of dollars, we have to realize if we're going to be spending, 4 trillion over the next 10 years, divided up over the next 10 years, it's not looking that good. Point four, so $400 billion every year will lose into the tax cuts, so basically costing us. And like some of these tax
You
cuts,
know,
I feel like are
can I jump in?
fair, but you can go on real quick.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to jump in because you mentioned that the bill it also targets Planned Parenthood because they also supply abortions, albeit that's a very very small percentage of the services they provide. They provide other critical services as well, STD treating, etc. So, but I wanted to point that out because I truly I'm just at a loss for words with the Republicans. The Republicans, it's I think it's pretty well established that they do not like women's health, just in general. Um,
Or understand it.
I think that's a fair statement. It's a fair statement to say, they're obviously against a woman's fundamental right to choose what happens to her body. They're against comprehensive sexual education that makes safe sex better. It's just they're against women's health. And what I don't understand is, they're pushing this line. They're continuing with this. They're getting beat. This position they have, this anti-woman position that they have, they're getting beat back on significant fronts. Of course, there's more work to do, absolutely, but they are getting beat back. Here in Ohio, we passed issue one that secures a woman's fundamental right to control what happens to her own body. That's true in other states as well. Um, but they're continuing on this crusade, and the question is why. And I think the answer is very simple. That there exists in the Republican Party a core group of evangelicals that have significant power and are willing to keep forcing this anti-woman agenda down the throat of Americans to make themselves feel better. And it's just disgusting as well. The budget bill, what can I say? It's anti-woman, it's anti-clean air, it's anti-poor people, it's anti-Medicaid. what else more do you want or expect out of a Trump funding bill?
Exactly, and like I said before, I looked up a little bit more as well, but I definitely agree. Like, I don't know. I'll go more about for numbers like I was about to a little bit, because like here in Ohio, I just looked up like because I said 35 for a family of four. In Ohio, it's 32 grand. If you make that, you're in poverty for a family of four. If you're a single person, poverty level in Ohio's 14 grand a year, $600. Um, two people, 20 grand. Three people, 2,600. So you got to think, like, am I at that level? Am I going to be losing healthcare insurance now? Or do I have? Am I about to? There's a lot of people I know that make decent money, even $14, $15 an hour, and they still don't make that a year just based on time. And like Medicare was already going to get cut anyway in 2025. They were taking a 2.8% pay cut under Medicare US for citizens, or making it a fifth consecutive year of cuts. It was a 1.69 cut in 2024 and a 2% cut in 2023. They have a power to reverse the cut as well, but they haven't. Um, so it's just like we do have to fund these things as well. Like Tommy's saying, we have to fund all these people in America to health care. I feel like it's fair. And also, something else I was thinking about is they say they're pro business, but it's not being pro business. It's actually being kind of anti small business because a lot of these small businesses rely on CareSource, and even like Walmart does, like even sometimes big businesses. But it's more likely that you'll get like better insurance or at least insurance out of a big
Right.
business. It all depends. But
You know,
for a small
if you
business,
want to get less,
if I have to take health insurance now, that's a major cost for my
yeah,
workers and myself.
you know, what you do if you want to get less people on Medicaid in the United States, it's very simple. You raise the minimum wage. But that's something that needs to be the federal minimum wage hasn't been raised since the Bush administration, way back in the early 2000s, $7.25 an hour. So you have companies like Walmart out there, who are not paying their employees a living wage. They're not providing them health insurance, and they're just letting the state subsidize their obligation as an employer. So Republicans, are we either in favor of state healthcare or are we not? Or I don't know. Make your position clear, because my position is very simple. Is that healthcare should be provided by the state. Okay, but I guess the Republican position is healthcare should only be given by the state when it's okay, when it allows for Walmart and other large corporations to not pay their employees enough and not give them health insurance.
Yep. And like it's funny too because they always want to say a national system doesn't work. It's only like even now, even Obamacare, it's not a national system. It gets paid nationally by the feds, but the states run it. So it's like, come on, guys, like it's funny. I remember growing up and doing like speech and debate in like 2015, 2016, and we would always talk about like big government, small government, and people always thought that like small government meant like the states had more control because the states understood the states more than the federal government did. The federal government has to hold understands the union as a whole more. I guess would be a better way to put it. But now Republicans don't even think like that at all, and they think that like, oh, it would be like a socialistic national program. I'm paying for everyone, and like it would work out well. It's working out pretty well right now. Like I said, there's a ton of people I know that are on this that get health care that they wouldn't, and there's a ton of people on the right that I know that rely on state health care. You know what I mean? They're having kids, and you could just tell based on things that like they are relying on the system, and that's okay. But like you can't like, I don't know, lie about that and say, I'm not going to act like this is going to not affect me. Maybe they didn't know, but now when it affects them, they're really going to realize it. Um,
So I've heard this argument that a universal national system can't work. I've been to 5 different countries. I've been very fortunate. And all 5 of them had universal healthcare systems. Like you know, uh, don't the Republican talking point of, oh, this just can't be administered. It's impossible. Blah blah blah. It's just not true. Like I've seen it with my own eyes, 5 different times. Like come on. Come on, it's not a serious argument here. It's not a serious argument. In fact, the United States spends more per capita on each patient than these countries that do provide healthcare as a right. So take that with what you will. It just seems like it's definitely is more Republican BS because they got friends at the health insurance companies.
Yep, and USA Today said the CBO estimates about 1.3 million people who are both on Medicaid and Medicare, which provides healthcare for seniors who lose Medicaid coverage. They'll basically end up losing the Medicaid coverage. Um, but some does not, such as
Ohio
long-term care,
Governor
will be lost. It's also going to help out like hurt families as well. What are you going to say, though, Tommy?
No, since we're kind of going on a little tangent here about healthcare. A couple of weeks ago, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, issued a request to the President of the United States to allow work requirements here in Ohio for our state Medicaid program. And as we talked about earlier, that's reflected in this current bill that's working its way, excuse me, through the Congress. So, I wanted to talk about that for a minute as well, because, I'll start off by saying, I believe, having a good job is very important. I believe in like the dignity of work. I agree with Senator Sherrod Brown, our great former senator who fought so hard for working families here in Ohio. Um, so I definitely agree that having a job is important. I think it gives you self worth. It's important. It's very good. But at the end of the day, a work requirement. There's going to be people out there that physically cannot work due to some physical or mental health condition. And even if they don't, let's say they don't, there's like, nah, man, I don't want to work. Nah, I want to be on Medicaid. I don't want to work. What kind of society are we if we say, if you don't work, we're not gonna pay for your cancer treatment. If you don't work, we're not gonna pay for your insulin for you to manage your diabetes. If you don't work, you're not gonna be able to get your prescriptions. If you don't work, you're not gonna be able to get this surgery. And the onus on these work requirements is always on, oh, these people need to work, 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 work. And I agree. I think I don't agree with work requirements, but like I said, I agree that working is important, the dignity of work. But the focus really needs to be not on the poor individual. The focus needs to be on, what do we value as a collective society? Do we think it's okay to deny medical treatment because someone refuses to work? What does that say about us? What does that say about us?
No, agreed. And
I
like
say it says some pretty about us.
100%. And it kind of shows, and I bet if you talk to a lot of people about it, what would you rather have your taxpayer money go to? Military and deporting people that actually help us out, or free healthcare? I've had health issues, and I've had to wait 2-3 months to see GIs, even in America. So it's not, we don't have a perfect system here. And like Tommy's talking about with work, some of it too is people have to realize, and having, like he's saying, that sense of community of, well, I go to work too, so the sick people don't have to. And that's how we should see it. Because one thing you learn in society and like sociology, and when you learn about communities and public health, having a healthy society will benefit you more, money wise, productivity wise, everything. So if you let your sick people actually like not work and get healthy quicker, and they're back to work, more productive and back to work quicker than they would if they were working and being sick, being less productive, it would help out. And I've seen it with a lot of people that had cancer and still had to work through it and make money to keep living because they had to help out family members and other stuff like that. So we really have to think about stuff like that. Like, how do you want to spend your money? Like, if you're gonna spend taxes, like, we might as well help people. And like Tommy's saying, other countries have that ideology. I wish America did. Um, any other topics on this before we go into our national news topic number 2?
No, I'm happy to take us into our second national news topic, which is Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, as the cool kids call him, SCOTUS, um, extends pause on deportations under the Alien Enemies Act in Texas. So, Supreme Court on Friday granted a preliminary injunction that extends a pause on deportations of Venezuelan immigrants in northern Texas under the Alien Enemies Act. The Supreme Court said that the government um, didn't give people at the detention center in Texas enough time to argue against their deportation. It overruled an order from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. By the way, the Fifth Circuit, for those of you that don't know, it's down there in Texas. It encompasses some southern states down south. It's very, very, very conservative Circuit Court of Appeals. So it overturned an order from the Fifth Circuit, which said it didn't have jurisdiction over the case, and said that Venezuelans had appealed too quickly after a lower court ruled against them. Supreme Court disagreed. Okay, so now into what the Supreme Court actually did. The Supreme Court said its order was meant to preserve its jurisdiction over the case while letting lower courts decide how much notice should be given to people the government wants to remove quickly under the Alien Enemies Act. It's not directly addressing the legal issue involving the Alien Enemies Act. So basically, according to the authors in here, basically the Supreme Court doesn't want to lose jurisdiction if people are flown out of the country before the courts resolve some issues that are related to due process and how much notice migrants should get before they're removed from the United States. That's what this is basically about, according to this NPR article, which makes a lot of sense. They're trying to slow down sort of how quickly these people are deported from the United States so that they can then be afforded due process, or more correctly put, courts can decide how much due process these people are entitled to under the United States Constitution. So kind of an interesting case. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes in course of due process. Of course, I am not an attorney. I do have a JD, but I am allowed to talk generally about the law. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yep, and it's interesting too because I was also reading today how they let him end deportation protections for like 350,000 Venezuelans in America. This is separate from this. So it's kind of interesting how, for certain things they are being right with due process. But if they're going to like end deportation for them here and then make it legal soon, he could take them out and deport them. That's not fair either, but we'll talk about that probably next week. Something I just don't...
that was an... Oh, sorry, continue.
Oh, you can go. Because I figured like 5 hours ago it came out for news today.
Yeah, I did see something, like a breaking news notification. I didn't have time to read the article or the opinion, but, who knows? I guess the only other thing I wanted to point out is, Alito and Thomas, issued a dissent. Having gone to law school and having read hundreds of Supreme Court cases, like you're in that big con law textbook. It's like, it's literally like 2,500 pages, 3,000 pages, massive. It weighs like 25 pounds. And you're scrolling through it and you see like, oh, opinion of the court delivered by Clarence Thomas. Like, oh shit. Like I don't think Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito have been right about anything ever. Like, it's crazy. And it's no surprise that they dissented on this.
Yeah. Agreed. And something I thought was interesting too, like a lot of our immigration like policies, we kind of have to realize they're like a part of our history. Like not like what we were talking about before, with like Lady Liberty, even like for migrants coming over, but some of it's like even more recent to the Holocaust, where like even when the Holocaust was happening, we turned away Jews that were seeking refuge. So we kind of said after that, bipartisan Republican and Democrats came together and said, okay, we're going to make it where if anyone comes and said, hey, I'm seeking refuge for political, religious reasons, we let them come in and we give them the due process of finding that out. We'll let a judge say yes or no if that's credible. So we have a lot of history with some of this stuff that's not just like our own family and ancestors, great-great-grandfathers coming over and stuff like that. So that's something that's interesting to me. I think John Oliver was talking about that on his episode yesterday. But I found that very interesting and something that, they don't really teach us in Ohio history books in high school, but it's kind of interesting. I feel like it maybe should be talked about a little bit more, and just about how good that is. Because it's still happening to this day. There's still dictatorships happening to this day. Pedro Pascal was an immigrant and seeked refugee in other countries and then America because of dictatorship in his original country. So there's still a lot of it for everyone up and down the board in society in America.
So I'm in favor of an immigration system that, where If you're deported, if you are going to get deported, you're afforded substantial due process rights under the United States Constitution. I'm in favor of an immigration system where if people show up to the United States, that they be given a hearing date where they'll be able to make their claim for asylum and they'll be able to understand the proceedings. They'll maybe even, they'll be given an attorney. Um, there's got to be a way to orderly assess cases individually, whether it's for asylum or some sort of other temporary or permanent status. There's got to be a way of vetting these people and getting them in and then giving them a pathway for citizenship. For people that are already in here, um, who many of these people, by the way, they had no choice. They have no choice but to enter the United States in enter the United States illegally because the current immigration system is so broken. It's like, here, your hearing dates in 10 years. Good luck, you know. But the problem is, we want to make this system that, allows refugees, that allows immigrants, um, particularly refugees, those seeking asylum, to make their case in front of a judge. That costs money. And the cold, hard truth of it is, like, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, is that the Republicans do not want to spend money on black and brown refugees coming from halfway across the country. So that's why this immigration issue continues with its platitudes. Build a wall, all of those sorts of things that have nothing to do with actually solving the problem of immigration. Um, because fundamentally, I think at their core, Republicans are not interested in solving the problem because solving the problem would help black and brown asylum seekers who they just despise.
Yep, and they know we'll vote for him in lesser numbers, which will hurt them. But some of it too, we just have to realize like what do we actually need as a country and in our economy to help us out as well.
Yeah,
And what's right.
I'm
So
sure
like
that's part of it.
it's I mean I don't know. They're a side of money, but they don't want to make the country money. They want to hurt it. Like it seems like a lot.
You know,
So
yeah,
okay.
just another crazy case. It's crazy. You have any more comments on that, or do you want to go to the second local news story?
Yeah, agreed. We'll go to the second one here in a second. I'll say like it is crazy, and like we're seeing today too, for new information. Like there are going to be so many different decisions made by the Supreme Court about this stuff, because Trump's asking a bunch of stuff for different migrant communities and immigrant communities. So we'll see. Tom, we can go into a local news topic number one as well.
Yeah, yep. Sorry, I misspoke. So this is what I was looking forward to. I opened my eyes today and I said, I can't wait to talk about David Yost. Okay, so quick recap. So May 9th, Ohio Republicans voted to endorse passing 51 to 13, and they gave the endorsement to Vivek Ramaswamy 60-3. Last Friday, David Yost, poor Dave, poor Dave. Dave, I think when Dave was born, he's like, I want to be governor of Ohio. Okay, I think that was his first thought. That was his first thought, and then he became all these different state offices, all with the hopes that he could finally reach up and achieve his true dream of being governor of the great state of Ohio. Didn't work out that way, Dave. I'm sorry for you, buddy. So last Friday, Yost dropped out and said, It's apparent, it's apparent that the steep climb to the nomination for governor has become a vertical cliff. I do not wish to divide my political party or my state with a battle over small differences between my vision and that of my opponent. I am simply not that important. I have I've spoken at length with many people whose advice and wisdom I respect, and I haven't come to this decision quickly or easily. I'm especially grateful to those who have pledged to climb the vertical cliff with me anyway. And thank you to those of you who have prayed with me for me in this hour. I will continue to fight for Ohio during that time, and I suspect this will not be my final chapter. So what a sweet PR laden statement from the Attorney General of Ohio, just announcing that his political career is effectively dead. I believe he's held every single major statewide office besides governor in Ohio, which he just dropped out with. So what exactly does Mr. Yost have planned for his future? I don't know. I don't know. But what's so funny? What is so funny about this was just a couple weeks ago in the Tribune Chronicles, they were talking to Yost, and Yost was saying like, "Oh, I was going to retire after this. I had to be talked into running for governor. I was going to retire." It's like, and then you quit, and then you say you don't think you'll see the last of me. What is it, Dave? What is it, Dave? Are you going to retire? Were you thinking about retiring and then decided to run for governor for the good of your country, for the good of your state? Or are you just some sort of person who just likes chasing titles? You're just like, oh, I'm attorney general, can't be governor. I'm going to go do something else then. Maybe I'll run for a dog catcher. Maybe I'll run for state rep, state senate. I'll do something. Anyone, please elect me. Please elect me. Like, I don't know what Dave's thinking with this, but it is evident that his path to becoming governor of the state of Ohio has closed, and it's been pretty apparent for quite a long time. Like, you got to remember, Ramaswamy, who is the guy that just completely destroyed Yost. Ramaswamy was endorsed by Trump, the current treasurer, United States Senator Bernie Moreno, Secretary of State Frank LaRose, several Republican state legislators, and of course, the final nail on the head was that endorsement vote. So, just crazy, and there's this sort of like internal GOP MAGA politics that's been interesting for me as a follower of politics in Ohio. It's been interesting to see this play out. So if you look at it like this, so like um Yost is like the experienced politician, okay,
Hmm.
in the Republican trying to seek governor. Vivek is like the MAGA lunatic with Trump's endorsement. Okay.
Yep, and way more money.
And Jim Trussell, who's supported by DeWine, but hasn't made an announcement, but he's well known and popular throughout the state due to his sports stuff. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But David Yost, I hope you enjoy being dog catcher because you certainly will not be governor of Ohio.
Yeah, it sucks for him, especially with everyone, all these new hats in the ring for governor. I think it'll be an interesting race. Um, it'll probably be very hard for the Democrats to win. I like Amy Axon a lot. I know a lot of Republicans are not going to like her from the COVID stuff. Um,
Yeah.
that's not really fair though, because I don't know. Not all of that was her. I feel like she was just the head,
No,
kind of like the Fauci for Ohio. She helped
yeah.
DeWine decide a lot, but DeWine being the governor makes those final decisions. And one thing I thought that was interesting, like even when a lot of Republicans were giving crap to the Democratic governor of California, Newsom, about like not obeying his stay-at-home ordinance, DeWine rarely did either. It's just no one cared about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that remember in the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson was holding those crazy parties during the
Yep, he had to resign
yeah.
over that. They finally
But
decided to care and get after him for it.
yeah, he got caught by their press across the pond.
But being around here, there's a lot of stuff Amy Axon has done in the Youngstown area, research-wise for her doctorate in exam of Columbus. So there's a lot you can learn. She's teach at OSU, but like I don't think that's gonna change. Even if Republicans are the side of health, they'll pick a tech bro over a doctor. That's just how they feel, and we see it a lot. So it would be amazing if she could win, but probably not. Especially with how much money Vivek will probably have
I,
being backed by Trump.
I firmly believe that I'm more qualified to be governor of Ohio. And by the way, I'm not qualified to be governor of the state of Ohio. I'm not saying that. I am not saying compared to Vivek's just a rich douchebag. At least I got some political experience here on the ground.
And like not even from the state
And an
either. Like
education.
it kind of shows that people just think that like it doesn't matter anymore. Just like screw politics. Let's just throw people that aren't from the state
Yeah.
in for governor. Because like Jim Tressel, kind of from the state, but Vivek would win over Jim in a primary for Republicans. But if it's Vivek versus like Amy Axon, someone from Ohio, it's crazy. She's from Liberty, so I don't know. People don't really think that much, and but we'll have to see. Um, are you done with this local news topic before we go on to our last
Yeah,
one?
I'm ready for you to move on to local news too if
All
you're
right, let me
ready.
take a sip of water real quick. All right, our last topic is how Warren Township um, to appeal the dam suit was dismissed, and the Metro Park have been given the money to tear down a dam in Warren Township and voted to do so, which caused controversy due to concerns about potential riverbank instability, exposed sewage, and other issues. Riverbank instability is not an issue because whenever they take out a dam, a lot of the times they will fix for riverbank. So you could do that pretty easily. A lot of times they have the dredge out for dam as well. And what they can do is just take that dredge, clean it, throw that soil in the riverbank. Um, is what I've seen for certain sites. The Metro Park owns the dam and is seeking to remove it as part of the Mahoning River Corridor Revitalization Plan, a project aimed at restoring a river to a natural free-flowing state, which will help for canoeing, kayaking, help out with a bunch of other things as well. There's a bunch of dams and lowhead dams too they've been removing all throughout the Mahoning River, which will really help out paddling, because it's kind of hard to get from Warren to Youngstown, which makes sense. There's a lot of steel mills and stuff, but they just have outflow pipes. They don't really need whole dams anymore. The county and Warren Township sued and lost. Judge Ray stated in his ruling that he would have denied the request for a preliminary injunction, knowing that the dam's removal and its role in the broader river revitalization plan. Several of the dams along the river have already been removed, like stated, including one in Lowville and one in Summit Street Dam in Warren. Summit Street Dam was, I believe, the one by the ice cream shop. The county will speak to its attorneys on Tuesday. Anything you want to speak on this real quick too, Tommy?
No, I mean, I just think this is interesting. You know, with the dam with the dam issue, I just want to reaffirm, my support for the metro parks. Actually, I was at a metro park today. I was walking my dog with my grandfather. I had a great time. I think they do great work at the metro parks board with the limited budget that they've been given, and I think they've kind of been they're kind of being strong armed here by Warren Township. So that's all I really have to say about it is, I love my local metro parks and I appreciate, all the work that they do on them, and I will continue to support them.
Yep, and like we talked about before, a lot of this issues that Warren Township have aren't really the best, like most safe issues either. If you have exposed sewage into a river, that's not the most safe
Yeah.
thing ever. That's illegal. Doesn't matter if it was grandfathered in, if it's 200 years old, it's illegal. Unless you have an EPA permit. And then you gotta get an EPA permit, so have fun with that. It's not easy. You gotta do it for Army Corps. Any river is a wetland, technically. So if Army Corps deals with that, that's very fun. And people may not want to do it if they live by it, but it's what's better for it as a whole. And, you shouldn't be doing that anyway, especially if there's a dam at the end of it. So, a lot of these issues can be fixed. And I also wonder if there's probably no grants to fix some of these issues if people, there's not like a HUD loan or anything from the state, I think, about like sewer, but there might be. And the township could always help. The township could be spending their time and money, their lawyers, figuring out what grants they could be getting for these people, or paying it for themselves, being like, hey, if you have an exposed sewer line, we will do it right and tie it into our sewer line or get you a proper septic system, a leach field. I've seen leach fields, because a lot of time a leach field will have an outflow pipe with nasty outflow pipes too, so that could be the issue. And that might just mean they need that fixed. A lot of this stuff like kind of is township issues too, because your sewer should be proper in a township. It's county health issues for septic and stuff, but I've seen drainage issues would be a proper word, but even like septic into that drain, and that's then a township issue, and the township wants to fix it. So they could definitely be spending their time better on trying to fix that kind of things and getting that figured out as well. Then they could also be figuring out like, hey, what could we do to help people, Champion Township, Warren Township, around that river, to want people to come more down to those areas. Do we have any areas around there that we can help out with? So that's about it for me on this topic. Like I said, I kind of agree with Tommy. I love the metro parks and all they provide for us. This is part of a bigger plan that kind of needs done. Like I said, if they're removing dams in Lowville and in Warren, that's definitely going to help out. Like be able to paddle all the way from Warren to Lowville, which is southern of Youngstown, or southeast, and that would really help out the area. Like if they can get a dock up top. Lowville has a dock, and they're actually they just sent out. They're about to send out bids for a project to help out the downtown area with that riverside area. So it'll be really exciting what these cities are doing.
No, I ultimately, I think this dam needs to come down. But with that being said, if I was in sort of any position of power, I would want to hear the concerns of Warren Township. We need to be investing like in communities like Warren Township and other communities around the state. Smaller communities. We need to invest in, of course, urban areas as well. But um, you know, hopefully, that there could be a good you know, a way where, the dam can come down and they get access to like city sewer, for instance. I'm not an engineer. I don't really know the complexities of, pros and cons of taking down this dam. I'm willing to say when I don't know something. And this is one thing that I don't entirely know other than, seemingly that, the Ohio EPA, I believe, approved taking down the dam. And it's, it seems to be from what I see, it seems like safe to do so, but I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an engineer, but ultimately, I want that. I think it'd be good for the area to have that sort of natural waterway preserved, but also, still listen to the concerns of the residents along this river, invest in their communities, maybe help them get, hooked up to a more modern sewer system. But
Yep.
yeah, it's an interesting issue, and it's interesting because it keeps reappearing here locally in Trumbull County. It keeps being brought up, so I figured we should finally talk about it.
Yeah, agreed. And like engineering wise, the township knows these people. Like they don't even have to come out and say unless they've lied, or build it on their own. But the township should know certain things, so like they could definitely plan it better and help them out. And something that's interesting too, like if a river was more of a free flow state and better flowing, it would make it cleaner too. So that could help more, like attract more people to the river just as a whole. So people don't think a lot of times like these dams kind of like stop um, a nice free river flow state, and then like you get it's like if you've ever been to Mohican or there's a place Cook's Forest in Pennsylvania. They have great rivers that don't have any dams. Really nice to paddle. You could um, float on them. They're great. Um, so let's hope they could do that. And like Tommy said, it would kind of be hard to give them a whole new sanitary line just for that project, money wise. But they could do something for them, like helping them out with new septic systems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, that don't tie into like a river, because you could always have it like I said, Leachfield has like an outflow pipe. You could have that tie in to something else, another drainage system, and then that river. Um, but even then, it could help free flow. Make sure everyone, if you enjoyed the content, to like, sub, and share. Follow us on Facebook in the description. Any comments, drop a comment. You do have to be a subscriber to comment, which basically just means you have to have a YouTube account and subscribe on us. That doesn't really like do anything besides like has us on your subscriber list, so you could find us on there. And then you could also like set notifications for everyone on like 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes before. Anything before we go, Tommy?
No, just thank you all for listening. I look forward to doing this again next week, where we will share more local and national topics. Make sure you tune into Liam's other shows. He's got How the Wellness Show coming, a sports show coming up.
Yep.
So tune in.
Yeah, we'll have a health and wellness Thursday, sports show on Thursday. Health and wellness at 7:30, sports show at 8:30. Please stop by. That's about it for me. I hope everyone has a great night. Once again, please like, drop a comment, whatever you guys like. Have a great start to your weeks. Hope Monday was okay. It
Okay,
happens.
everybody.
Have a good